Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the Flamecast. This is a series where we interview and talk with both guests of FlameCon past and present and future. And today is of no exception. We have someone who is very wonderful creator, artist. Hamish, please, Hamish, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Hamish Steele. What is there to say? I'm a comic artist and I'm the showrunner of Dead End Paranormal Park, which is based on some of my graphic novels, the Dead Endia books. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here.
We're very excited to have you. For those who are unfamiliar with Dead End Paranormal Park, we have a very special trailer for you that you can watch right now.
Hello, I'm Pauline Phoenix. We'll be at my very own theme park.
Come on, Pugsley. If I get this job, we can get a place of our own.
Opportunity at Phoenix Park's Dead End attraction. Please arrive at sundown.
Welcome, mortals. You two must be the offerings. I didn't know there'd be a choice.
I rescind my application. The job's yours!
Pugsley, please.
Do not give orders to the great Tamalucas.
Tamalucas' soul is now in that dog for good.
I'm back! Oh yeah, I talk now. This is not okay. Would you like to know what your butt smells tell me? Oh, and I also have magic powers.
Awesome.
Step right in. Oh, stop this. This is the first place I've ever felt like I could just truly be myself.
But that's how I feel. You left me!
No, I left everything.
Come on, guys.
Hey there, little guy.
It's exactly what it looks like.
That's right, it's coming out June 16th. That's so fun. So having started this journey as a graphic novel series, so what was that journey like of getting it from Dead Endia, the book series, and turning it into Dead End Paranormal Park, the Netflix animated series?
It's been a funny journey because it's always been both animation and comics. The graphic novels were an adaptation of a YouTube short I made in 2012. That came out in 2014. And before then, it was comics. So it's kind of gone from comics to animation over and over again. But the graphic novels, I don't know. I've always wondered what this show would be like if it hadn't had the graphic novels, which began as webcomic as well. And I've always felt that web comics and comics in general have always been decades ahead of other media in terms of representation, and allowing creators to tell their own stories. So adapting a graphic novel, compared to times where I've tried to pitch shows like this without any kind of graphic novel, it was a very different experience because we had a guide in a way, and we had something we could show execs like, I prove that this works. We can have characters like this. That said, there was never any pushback from Netflix, and they were very encouraging about the content of the show. and also like episode 1 is a pretty close adaptation of chapter 1 of the books, but from episode 2 onwards, I think of them as being different journeys to the same destinations. So they stand on their own as two separate things, I think. And that was all, I made the comics myself, especially the first book, sort of making it up as I went along as a webcomic, but getting to collaborate with other writers and creators who knew what they were doing a little bit more than I did back when I wrote the books. I wanted to encourage that. I never wanted to adapt it and say, like, stick to the very word, because I always knew that it could be bigger and better. So I think the show is the definitive like version of the story in some ways.
I mean, I can't wait for it to get to the point where the show is successful and it goes back to comics for the sort of other stories to be told, like a lot of other popular animated series.
So that'd be very cool. I know it's interesting because so many adaptations have had to cut stuff from books. Whereas for us, it felt like there was so much more room to tell more stuff. There's definitely things that were cut or changed. But I like to think that the show is kind of a deeper look into the world than the books were ever able to do.
Well, I mean, there aren't many shows that feature trans storylines, let alone star trans characters or actors. So what do you hope kids and adults will take away from this series?
Yeah, it's when we pitched the show in 2019, and I sort of assumed that by the time the show came out, there might be a lot more shows like ours. There's definitely been lots of progress, but there's so much more to do. I hope that to me, the show doesn't dwell on transphobia or anything like that, but it's so rampant the last few years, I feel, globally. Mm-hmm. I know from my experience in the UK that the media is extremely transphobic, and it seems at the moment that the UK's biggest exports are Great British Bake Off and transphobes. So I felt definitely a lot of responsibility to. I feel like a lot of transphobia comes from fear mongering and moral panicking, and I feel like if through Barney, some people can just know a trans person rather than believing what a lot of the media says about them, that would be cool. But in terms of actual queer audiences, I hope that through the show we can kind of send a message saying, you're not alone, and there's people out there, there's adults, there's companies, there's people making shows who have your back and are trying to give you a voice when you maybe don't feel like you can have one. That's the heavier stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the stuff that I talk a lot about in interviews. When you're watching the show, I feel like it's very joyous and very just fun. It's like it ultimately is a comedy, horror, adventure show for kids. And that's the main takeaway. I hope people just have fun while watching it.
Very much. I mean, speaking for myself, I found it highly enjoyable. And I enjoyed sort of the dichotomy of honoring and talking about the realities for a lot of trans youth, but also that because a lot of stories end up getting it's just about the trauma, and it's just about that the terribleness, and doesn't always celebrate their lives. The trans kids are just kids trying to live their lives, and this Barney is trying to, like any kid, is just trying to survive living at a haunted amusement park, like any kid his age, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance, the show we wanted to get, because the show does take place in the real world. You know, I love shows that take place in worlds where there isn't bigotry. I
Mhm.
really do. And that's a really valid way of making a show. Ours takes place more in the real world. We don't put any like on-screen transphobia. Like it's not traumatizing or anything to watch.
Right.
But Barney's story is influenced by the fact that, and the whole like theme of the show is that the world is not necessarily made for everyone, and the people who feel maybe left out by the world cling together generally, and why that's important, and why that as a kind of found family theme I think will hopefully resonate with a lot of viewers, no matter who they are. I think Barney's, you know, I think Barney's a very relatable sort of everyman in some ways, because ultimately his issues are that his parents don't really always have his back, and I think that is a experience that everyone should be. Well, not everyone. Lucky, a lot of nice, lucky people maybe don't, but I feel like it's a relatable experience, and it just so happens that in our story he's trans, and it is an important part of the story, but it's not the whole story.
Well, and you have a very diverse cast of characters, and you know, we talk about intersectionality and the importance of diverse characters. Would you expand on why it was important to you to feature queer characters from varied backgrounds and identities?
Well, when I made it originally as a webcomic, I wasn't thinking about quote unquote representation. I was just drawing the world as I saw it and my friends and my experiences. And then through every stage of adapting it, when I turned that into a graphic novel series and then a Netflix show, there was an added responsibility and an added, more people are going to see this, and more people aren't going to exactly know where you're coming from or like trust you. Maybe when you're making a webcomic, you get to kind of put the pages out to your audience along with like a little bit of text. They get to know you a bit better. But from a lot of audiences, this is a Netflix show and they don't know who it's coming from.
Right.
So I always wanted the crew of the show to reflect the show itself, and our writer's room to reflect that. I've always felt like on-screen representation doesn't matter if you're not doing off-screen representation and giving people jobs, giving marginalized people jobs and chances. It's not enough to. I mean, I've had this experience so often where a writer's room wants diversity, but the higher ups also want to make sure every writer has a decade of TV writing experience, and they're like, it's not enough to make other shows and other studios do the work for you by giving people chances and giving people jobs and letting people tell their stories. So our writers' room was not only diverse in terms of identity or experience, it was kind of in terms of career. We had like a few people who'd written a bunch of cartoon shows, but we also had people who'd written plays, or people who hadn't had something come out yet, or people who were from soaps, or more drama writers. So I remember that was kind of the way we tackled it. And I never really had to fight Netflix on anything, but I think it was a bit of a leap of faith, a little bit, with our writers' room. We had great interviews and like I trusted all of them, but it was only until the scripts came in that we realized that it had worked, I guess. Again, probably helpful that we had a book to kind of be our guide.
Right.
So yeah.
No, and I think it's important, as you said, to have that, not only the diversity on screen but behind the scenes, and you get that within the storytelling. You get these diverse experiences that sort of come through within the storytelling. So,
and with animation, it's every step of the way. Like, it's not just the writing, but the storyboarding, the animating, making sure that any plot point that kind of made its way to screen had gone through quite a few, has gone through quite a lot of people. And we had open channels discussing the content of the show. We talked a lot about, there were times when storyboarders would bring up something like a concern they had, or animators would bring up a concern, and we'd talk it out or address it or tweak it. Just making sure, I mean, maybe that's one benefit to, we made the whole show working from home because the pandemic kind of hit essentially as soon as we started production. And so having an open Slack channel where anyone on the crew could like hit me up and say, hey, I've noticed something, or I feel like this joke reads this way when you didn't intend it. That didn't happen very often because I do think we like did a good job of making the show, but I think, I don't know, I would never want to run a show as the like scary, intimidating my word goes show. And I think knowing that I was show running a show based on my comic books, I was very concerned that people would think that it would be a massive ego trip and like, every single line that's in there, you must stick to it. That wasn't the case. It was very collaborative. So yeah, I don't know. Give people money. Give like, if you're gonna put queer characters on screen, you must like. I'm hoping that you're giving some queer people some money and some jobs and some experiences.
Yes, please. Yeah. Well, speaking of queer, so we've officially entered Pride Month, and I'm curious as to who is part of your community. Like, where do you find pride?
Interesting. I do feel like when I first moved to London, I initially tried hanging out with a lot of it's I don't know, it's like it I don't want this to be read in the wrong way, but I joined my like university's LGBT society, and it was very cis gay focused. And I sometimes, because I'm also autistic and I find socializing really hard, and I found everyone sort of knew each other. Everyone was, I felt quite left out sometimes. So the people I was typically drawn to, and the kind of community that built up my like sort of found family vi friend group, was very trans, very non-binary, very, I guess, on sort of wallflowers, was kind of how I found my people, and lots of artists and people really interested in like genre fiction and how it sort of frees us to tell our stories. So that's kind of the world I was in when I started writing Dead Endia. Like I said, I wasn't thinking about quotation marks representation at the time. I was thinking more about, I want to write a fun comic about what if my friends and I were like in a haunted theme park. So that's how I sort of found myself. And since then I've been a lot more confident and about hang out with everyone in the community. So that's kind of where I am now.
Want to wrap things up, so I don't take all of your time, because I would love to talk to you more, especially about, there's so much I could talk about the series, particularly Miss Paulina, and influences behind that character. By the way, Love, I was like, wait a minute, I know that voice. I know that. Wait, and I had to like look it up. I was like, Miss Coco Peru. Okay.
There's auditions where you don't stop laughing, and there's like most auditions, you're like, they were really good. Let's like, try out their voices with the other cast. Let's like think about it. And then there's auditions where as soon as they leave the room, you're looking at everyone else being like, if we don't get her, we have like, done a crime to ourselves. And that was definitely one of them.
would love to get into more, but one of the things I do love to hear from everyone is just because everyone consumes things differently. What are you getting down and nerdy with? What are you consuming in pop culture right now?
Wow. Well, I'm pushing ahead in comics, and I do know the next big comic book that I want to make. I'm not very good at consuming media for media's sake. I always have to frame it as like research or
Right.
whatever. But the next big comic book I'm working on is definitely my tribute to kind of Godzilla and Super Sentai, which is what Power Rangers is kind of like edited from. Which
Yeah.
I like. Godzilla is sort of my special interest, and I've always watched Godzilla films, but I'm definitely like, knowing that it's for a project gives my brain permission to just like go all in. So anything that's like even tangentially sort of connected to Power Rangers-esque things, I am fully justifying in like buying art books and figures and watching hours and hours and hours of stuff. I'm like getting all my friends over at some point soon to watch like a bunch of Godzilla movies. I don't know if this will really work, but I like on my shelf I've got like a bunch of Godzilla things.
Oh, neat.
And I went to Comic-Con the other week and sent my husband a photo with the new Godzilla I bought, saying, I'm so sorry I bought another one. But yeah, so that's what I'm always a low level, like I say low level. I mean, you always at sort of 75% talking about Godzilla and loving Godzilla, but I'm at the moment at a sort of a 98%.
It's only fair. It's only
yeah.
fair. Well, Hamish, it's been so delightful to chat with you and to get a little bit more behind the scenes of Dead End Paranormal Park. Where can people find you?
Well, I'm at Hamish Steele on all the things. Instagram, Twitter. I talk a lot on Twitter. I need to cut down, but that's just where I am. And I do have a website, hamishsteele.co.uk. It's currently under construction, but maybe by the time this is out, it'll be up again. Because I realized, to my horror, after like 2 years of working on a show, hey, my website hasn't even mentioned that like I have a book out, let alone a TV show. And you know, who know? I don't know if websites even like, do people go to people's websites anymore? But I have updated it now, so it does mention I did make a TV show, so I can like prove to my parents that it's a real job.
Well, I certainly have checked it out, and I've also checked out Dead End Paranormal Park. It is a delightful series, and I'm hoping for more seasons. I'm hoping for the 5 seasons in a movie, and the continued comic series.
Mm-hmm.
These are just some fun characters, and yeah, in my head, it's like a twisted version of Dollywood.
Yeah, I went to Disneyland and a theme park in the UK as well. Fully justified as research, but
exactly. Yeah. Well, Hamish, thank you so much for chatting with us. You can find out more about Geeks Out and FlameCon at Geeks Out at FlameCon. FlameCon is happening August 20th and 21st this year. That's right. It's happening in person.
And I believe I will be there.
So you can meet Hamish in person and fan out. But thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Flamecast. Until next time, we're out.